Well, there seems to be a theme today about telling your PBL story, so I figured I would just follow suit. You see, when I tell people that I taught high school math, they usually assume that that means I had a deep-rooted love for mathematics. The truth is, it was actually the opposite. You see, like many students, I didn't believe I was good at math. I was frustrated. I was disengaged. I thought of math as just a series of rules and formulas to memorize for a test. So why then? Why did I decide to become a math teacher? Well, I have a very vivid memory of sitting in a math class, similar to this, and thinking to myself, there has to be another way. There has to be more to this than what I was experiencing. That sparked something in me, a desire to seek more, to seek what was possible. So I made the somewhat unpredictable choice to major in math in college. And what I found along my journey was that, in fact, math was about more than just all those facts and formulas. It was about a way of seeing the world. It was about making sense of data, about problem solving. It was about lots of different things. And so that was the kind of math that I could get excited about. That was the type of math that I wanted my future students to experience. And I began to see a vision of what could be. What if math class didn't have to look like this, and instead it looked something like this? Students using math to experience the world around them, working together to solve really complex problems, seeing the relevance in what they were learning. Fortunately for me, I got my first teaching job at a school right here in Napa Valley called New Technology High School. New Tech High is a fully project-based school. And when they hired me, they paired me with a physics teacher, and they asked us to design an integrated math science PBL course. At the time, there weren't a lot of examples of what that could or should look like, so we used that opportunity to reimagine what learning could look like for our students. But what we knew is that we wanted the learning to be relevant and meaningful. We wanted them to experience real science, real math, to see themselves as mathematicians and scientists. So we gave them interesting problems to solve. They were collecting and analyzing data. They were developing their mathematical skills, not just for a test, to present in front of an authentic audience. They were engaged. They were learning. They were becoming mathematical thinkers. It was about more than just the transfer of knowledge. It was about the transformation of knowledge. That first year definitely was not perfect, and it was very challenging, but it showed me firsthand what's possible, what students are capable of when we give them the opportunity, what can happen when we crack the door even a little bit to the different ways that students learn. Looking back on that first year, I realized that there were conditions in place that helped us to shift our practice, to create that type of learning environment for our students. Over the years, as I've worked with countless other educators and schools and leaders all seeking to implement PBL, they often ask the question of, how do we get systemic, lasting change? In other words, how do we get PBL to stick? Well, it should come as no surprise to you that it's not one singular thing. It's a systems thing. It's about how all the parts of the system come together as a cohesive whole. Far too often in education, we look for that one magical thing that's going to magically transform outcomes for students. And we fail to look at the broader system and how it's aligned, or perhaps misaligned, to the outcomes that we're after. So what are those critical things? I believe there's 3 critical foundational pieces that create a supportive environment for PBL to stick. The first is a clear and shared purpose. At New Tech High, we had a commitment to a broader set of learning outcomes, outcomes that you've heard a lot of the speakers talk about today. Outcomes like critical thinking, collaboration, communication. These kept us focused. These were our lighthouse. These pushed on our practice. If I wanted my students to learn how to collaborate, I had to put them in groups and give them a problem that they couldn't solve on their own. If I wanted them to develop critical thinking skills, I couldn't just ask them simple questions anymore. If I wanted them to develop the ability to communicate, I had to put them in front of an authentic audience for them to share their ideas. The second is a culture of collaboration. My team teacher was my lifeline that first year. We supported each other, we pushed each other, we held each other accountable to the type of learning that we wanted to create for our students. But that culture of collaboration extended beyond our classroom and across the whole school. As a staff, we regularly looked at student work to find out what was working and for whom. We shared and critiqued our projects. We made ourselves open and vulnerable to each other. And this is how we got better. This is how we made PBL stick. There was also a culture of transparency. This is a picture from inside New Tech High. Some of you might have been there. But as you can see, there's windows instead of walls, and that was by design. As a first-year teacher, you can imagine that this was terrifying for me, that anybody at any moment had a glimpse into my classroom. There was no closing the door and doing my own thing anymore. It was fully transparent. But over time, I learned to embrace that transparency because it helped me to be a better teacher. At any moment, I could see across the hall into my colleagues' classroom and made me wonder, what are they doing? What's working for them? That transparency also included our students. Frequently, we sat down with our students, just like this, and we asked them for their feedback. What's working for you? What do you need? What can we do differently? And we listened to them. We gave them a voice in the learning process. This helped to shape the type of culture that helped to form the type of learning environment that we wanted. It was a culture of trust and respect among everyone in the building. The last piece that I'm going to talk about are structures that enable. Underneath all of this are the things that need to be in place for this type of learning to occur. Structures like team teaching, like collaborative planning time, like collaborative spaces in your school buildings, like extended blocks. We had 2-hour blocks at New Tech High. That one structural piece pushed on my practice because, believe me, I wasn't about to stand in front of those kids and lecture for 2 hours straight. So it made me think about how I could use time differently, how I could really use that time to differentiate for the individual students within that classroom, how we could really give them the opportunity to dig deep into concepts. We integrated classes. So rather than just teaching English in isolation, we taught English with art, or perhaps even biology. We were flexible with our time so our students could get out into the community and learn and see the relevance in what they were doing. All of these things, oh yes, and we gave our students the tools that they needed to be self-directed learners. So we had one-to-one laptops in our school. And as many of you know, as soon as you put a laptop in front of a kid, it changes the dynamics of the classroom. You have to ask them more complex questions that they can't just Google online. So all of these things help to make PBL stick within our school. They helped to make that type of learning environment that we wanted. So I'd like to invite you today to think about your system and how these things look in your system. What is your purpose? What does your culture look like? What are your structures to support PBL? That's what we're going to be talking about in my deep dive. So I thought I would end by just sharing a picture of some recent grads from New Tech High. They just graduated last week. It's graduation season. And I personally love graduation because it reminds me of why we do this work. I love the looks on their faces when they're so proud of everything that they've accomplished, all those projects that they did, all those public presentations that they did. They've made it, and they're eager about what lies in front of them. It reminds me what's possible. Thank you.